The final piece of new Valve hardware we are still waiting on is the Steam Frame. Now, knowing my luck, literally the night before this video comes out, it's probably going to be announced when it's coming out and exactly what the price is going to be, completely ruining this intro. But if not, we know we're at least a few steps closer to that day finally coming. Over the past few weeks, there have been a lot of these little changes going on, little bits of information being released, but it's very obvious this is happening sometime very soon. One of those being Lepton, Valve's Android ARM to Linux ARM translation layer, is being added to the relevant Steam Frame standalone games. Those being Ancient Dungeon VR, Cubism, Escape Simulator, Pistol Whip, Title Isles, Underdogs, Virtual Fighter Maneuvers, and more to come soon. Following that, Beat Saber, which by all accounts should be working fine on this device, was marked as Steam Frame Ready unsupported, at least temporarily. Now, this is a game that a lot of people like to play in VR, and it's very unlikely that this game is not going to work properly on this headset. Now, people are going to say, oh, well, it's a meta game, and they're not going to care to optimize it. Doesn't really matter. Most game developers don't really care to optimize their games for Proton, but they are still working with it. But not only that, the Android version of VR Chat was made available on Steam, and more recently, it's now actually downloadable if you know how to get access to the download manifest. And to make it even more clear, a bunch of changes were made where they're setting up the guided tour for the Steam Frame. All of this is about the initial onboarding, the initial setup process, how you're going to interact with the Steam Frame controllers, how you're going to make sure they are configurable, and all this good stuff. It's very clear that if stuff like this is being pushed out to the public repos, this is something they are very clearly pretty close to releasing. Then, a bit more recently, we got version 3 of the Steam Frame ARM64 compat list. This is the list of games which are ARM64 games that are compatible running on the Steam Frame. If we go to the metadata, here we have a list of the compatibility tools, and then under that is a list of games. Now, most of these games are not VR games, but you don't just have to play VR games on the Steam Frame. So I think like Celeste is in the list and a whole bunch of other titles. And remember, even if a game is not on this list, it doesn't mean it is never going to be supported. When Proton first came out, the list was incredibly short, and over time more games were tested, over time more games started to work, and even in that initial phase, way more work than what was initially stated. And now, the reason I made this video. Lepton and FEX have now been released on Steam. Truly, Steam Frame is actually soon. TM. So, if we go to these two Steam DB pages, here is the Lepton page, and here is the FEX page. You might notice 3 in-app, 1 in-app. If we go to the charts, the peak was 24. If you want to go and install these, click on this little button right here. It'll open up your Steam client, and you can go and use them right now. So, just in case anybody forgot, let us go and talk about what these tools actually are. Let us start with the FEX project. FEX can be found right here on the FEXMU GitHub, a fast user mode x86 and x86 64 emulator for ARM64 Linux. Basically, the Steam Frame is an ARM-powered device. It is not using x86, it's not using your regular Intel or AMD CPU, it is using something that is ARM64 powered, the same kind of chip that would be in something like your phone or frankly, plenty of other VR headsets out there. The problem with that is a lot of the games you want to play are either x86, they're 32-bit x86 games, or x86 64 for anything in the past like 15 plus years. FEX takes these cools that are intended for an x86 platform and converts them into relevant cools on an ARM platform, and it does this in a fairly transparent way. Now, you might have some level of performance degradation. Any sort of middleman is going to end up doing that, but it's not as much as you might think. But the Steam Frame is also a Linux-powered device, so it is ARM64 and Linux. FEX will do the ARM64 part, But the Linux part, that is done with Proton. Proton takes the Wine project, which takes the Windows calls and converts them into Linux calls, alongside things like DXVK to take the DirectX calls and convert them into Vulkan calls, and with all of this stuff merged together, you can then play your Windows x86 64 games on Linux ARM64, which is what the Steam frame is using. Now, it's not just about the Steam frame, and this is what is really cool. FEX is open source, the code is out there, and presumably the binary you can download on Steam is the same binary that you can get right here on the FEX repo. This is something that is also being used on Android as well. So people are doing Steam gaming, playing their Windows Steam games on their Android phones and Android tablets and other Android devices they might have. This is thanks to applications like GameHub and Game Native using this same technology. And here's what makes FEX even cooler. This project literally never would have existed without the help of Valve. It has been around for 7 years now, and it was like kinda sorta known, but it was made crystal clear that Valve was funding this project from its very beginning. This is well before the announcement of the Steam frame. This is well before the announcement of the Steam Deck. This is just something they were quietly doing in the background, quietly working on, until eventually it's like, hey, here's some hardware. We're doing something with it. Now, it was probably like, they probably would have had plans at the time for building something ARM-powered, because otherwise, like, why would you even do this? But there was nothing, like, publicly known about why they would have funded this. Now, Lepton, on the other hand, this is a very different situation. This is a fork of a project known as Waydroid. Waydroid is a way to run Android applications on your regular Linux system. So if you want to play Android games, you want to run Android apps, this is a way to do so. But the relationship between Valve and Waydroid is very, very different. When this was stated on Twitter by Brad Lynch, Waydroid were like, yo, we didn't know about this. Are you not interested in supporting our project? Like, what is going on? Like, did the Wine guys know you guys were working with Wine before, like, anything came out? Like, like, we're as in the dark as everybody else here. And saying a lot more recently, we still don't see the credit, yet we see plenty of evidence that our vendor profile, Howls, and others have been used. And Waydroid is GPL v3. And to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't appear like the source code has been published, like, anywhere yet. Now, technically, they only need to provide it to customers, and the Steam frame's not out yet, and that's going to be the main producer of customers. So, I'm confused. Like, I'm really confused what is going on, because Valve has been very open in supporting FEX, KDE, like Wine, like all of these other tools that they've constantly been supporting, but the Waydroid guys seem to just be entirely in the dark about what is going on, which is weird, right? Like, this is not the way Valve ever operates in the FOSS space, so they don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what is going on here. Just to put it into perspective, a large portion of the VR games are Android VR games. Waydroid is just as important to the Steam frame as Wine is to every other bit of hardware that Valve has. Like, I don't know what's going on. I hope things change post-launch, because otherwise, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? Besides that glaring problem that hopefully gets resolved, Valve has been cooking on Linux for a very, very long time at this point, funding tons of developers across Codeweavers, Collabora, Agalia, Blue Systems, which has since moved to Tech Paladin. These are the KDE people. In many cases, Valve engineers are doing things directly and getting that work upstreamed into the relevant projects, whether that be KDE, Wine, the Linux kernel, Mesa, which is why Lepton is just such a very, very weird case. Then they're sponsoring projects like Arch Linux, which is used to build SteamOS. Then they have Hollow Core, which is something Collabora made, directly funded to do the work by Valve, which is an ARM version of Arch, which is being used to build SteamOS, which then may lead to ARM support being upstreamed into the Arch project. Then we have all of the work on Proton, which took Wine, merged that with DXVK and VKD3D, and got Linux gaming to the point where it's not only, like, okay, but actually legitimately good outside of competitive multiplayer games, but that's a whole nother story. Even though it is still a problem with developers actually enabling it, Valve did have those discussions with the EAC developers, with the Battle Eye developers, to actually go and make Linux support, which has led to others which were not involved at all, actually just going and supporting Linux. Now, there are separate ones out there which are actively blocking Linux. That's something that does need to be worked on. Then we have GameScope, which handles FSR and FPS limits outside the game, amongst a whole bunch of other things to make gaming just, quite a bit more convenient. Then we have Pressure Vessel to isolate games away from system-breaking updates, also upstreaming more and more controller drivers to the kernel, so you don't need to worry about installing anything, you just plug a controller in and it just works. Many, many, many years ago, they hired the developer of SDL to just work on SDL and maintain the codebase. After many years of stalling, many years of discussions, Valve basically pushed HDR. They made a device which is powered by Linux, which had an HDR screen. We're like, okay, nobody else is going to make this happen. We will just do it. A Valve engineer created explicit sync for Wayland and got it merged into Wayland Upstream, and now it's pretty much become standard across all Linux desktops. Not having this was a major source of stuttering. Also, they've invested into OpenVR platforms on Linux rather than just trying to push their own thing. As annoying as it might be, they did build out tooling for shader pre-caching, which also helps games to avoid stutters, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Now they're even funding work to bring RADV, which is the AMD Vulkan driver, over to Windows as well, which then makes Mesa a standard across both Linux and Windows, and problems that exist on Windows can then be resolved before anyone notices them on Linux. Honestly, I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm excited to see where we are like 10, 15 years from now, because Valve has been funding Linux stuff well before even the original Steam machines. They've been going all on this platform for a very, very long time, and I hope that doesn't change. I hope that doesn't change anytime soon. And what that means, where that goes, who knows? All I know is right now, it's going in a good direction, and I like it. So, let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video. Go subscribe as well. If you're on mobile, go and hype the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribes to LiberaPay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and release the pressure.
Money that I don't accept.